last week. We're trying to make up this week, and we have a couple of interesting topics. It's been a little slow political week, but we still have some takes on some of the current events that's going on, and probably go a little deeper dive into some of the topics. So we have a good show, and we look forward to partaking our not partaking no relaying our message and our ideas with you guys today.
How are we doing, everybody? Not the biggest week. I mean, I feel like it's a hit or miss when it comes to news. Like one week will be 15 major news items, and then this week is more or less. I mean, we had a couple big things with like the UN Security Council voting on the ceasefire in Gaza finally, because the U.S. has been blocking, vetoing time and
Yeah,
time again. Finally, they just sort of abstained. They kind of gave up on at least pushing against it, which gave the UN the green light to actually pass the I don't know what they're called. I don't even know if they have a way of authorizing these or enacting any sort of I don't know how connected Israel is to the UN. That's all I'm saying. Do they actually have a way of enforcing anything?
no, I don't think they're a permanent member. I think only the U.S. has that kind of big vote, swap the vote, because they're permanent members, just like Russia and China is. So I don't really think they have that kind of sway in the UN. But I think it was a major setback because
I don't know that they have the sway in the UN, but does the UN have the sway over Israel? That's kind of what I'm saying. Can this like this vote does
God,
this vote actually enforce anything over Israel, or is it just sort of like condemnation where they're like bad?
I thought the vote was allowing a cease, allowing a ceasefire during Ramadan,
Oh, it's
right?
only during Ramadan. I thought it was supposed to be like a long term or longer term thing, or at least like I don't know. I guess I'd not read too much into it. I just sort of watched Jon Stewart react to that.
Yeah, I think when let me pull it up though. But yeah, I think it was because of the Ramadan. They were just still doing attacks on the Palestinian people, and they essentially kind of said, "Hey, don't attack people during Ramadan. It's like a religious holiday for them."
Yeah, I mean,
And
it's not like you should attack people just because it's not a holiday, but at least it's one step in the right direction.
yeah, but the problem is, the, the issue that the White House has and the president has is just finding this balance act between his bases. I mean, you're never gonna
Yeah,
outright say, the Israeli people don't have a right to defend themselves. I think they do. And I
yeah,
think no one can argue that. But the
yeah. It's
problem,
it's it's an inconsistency for you to say that Israel has the right to defend itself, but like the innocent Palestinians don't, and at the same time, they're all Hamas if they stand up against Israel, and
Mhm.
they clearly don't care if they're Hamas or not. They're the majority of the casualties have been just completely innocent people, anyways. So this
Yeah,
conflict has to end.
yeah, exactly. So it's a very tough, you know, position the Biden administration's in, but it is a it's very important that they do take a very heavy stance against brutality by the
Yeah,
Israeli army. And I think that the abstain vote was a good vote because it showed that there are limitations that we have in towards the treatment of
yeah,
Palestinian people. And I think that it was a loud message sent to Israel to know that, hey, we support you, but with limitations. And and I think it was a good thing. It was the right thing for the president to do.
yeah. Because up until this point, Israel's basically had a green light to do anything, and they can get away with it because Biden's been pretty weak on pushing back against Netanyahu up until very recently. Netanyahu is far right. Just because he's just because he's Jewish doesn't mean he's not a Nazi. Like he's as close to being a Nazi, a fascist as you could be ideologically. He just believes in imperialism, expansionism, nativism. doesn't. He's anti-Islam. Heavily militaristic, obviously. Not too concerned about civilian casualties, and it has to end. It's pretty clear, and they don't care about Hamas. It's as close to a genocide as you can get. They're clearly just trying to eliminate the Palestinian population so that they can expand their territory onto the ruins of what was once Gaza and what was once Muslim property. You know what I mean? Just because that the Jewish people or the Israeli people had a historical tie to the land doesn't mean the Arabs didn't as well, and they have a much closer tie. They were living there not 5 seconds ago before you blew it up. This sort of nativist ideology that's been a part of every single society and pretty much in human history is like it's a cancerous. It's not very intellectual. It's like you're born on a piece of sand, so therefore you are me. You are like me. But then you're born a little bit farther away, then you have lesser value than somebody close to me. I mean, I'm more concerned about somebody, their values and the kind of person that they are. And, there's good people in every single country and hardworking people that don't give a shit about geopolitics and or any of that stuff. People are so hyper fixated on their own problems and their own fears that they project them onto every other person in the entire planet that's not them. That's easy to when they're not in their in group. And that's just all of politics essentially broken down.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
think
in
this,
group out group. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I really think what we're seeing is just a crisis. The Israeli government using a crisis to move an agenda ahead. So I believe the
Identical
youth
to 9/11 in my opinion.
very identical.
Yeah.
They saw that there was a rallying cry of a nation wanting something to be done by the actions of the Palestinian, by the Hamas
Yeah.
organization within the Palestinian community. And they took that to say that, okay, we're going to completely just wipe out Gaza
Yeah.
stands and we're going
Because
to
every
finally,
Palestinian has ties to Hamas in their view.
in
So,
their view,
which is pretty I mean, it's pretty blatant what they're calling for, but you get attacked for calling it genocide because I don't know, because they have good PR. That's
yeah,
essentially it.
yeah, and it's politics really. It's taking an opportunity, a crisis, and essentially going about it as a way to extend an agenda that's been going on for 30, 40 years
Yeah,
to completely wipe out a group of people so that you can have 100% rights to a land that
yeah,
was really given to you
yeah.
by Europeans.
It was given to you by people who had also had no right to the land.
Exactly.
Imperialists gave it to other imperialists, and the fact that Israel exists now, that's fine. Those people have been there for their entire lives, entire generations. There's no way we would want to even get rid of them off of Israeli territory because it was once Palestinian territory, because then we're just repeating the exact same problem that we just came from. So maybe just leave people alone and let them live on the land that's their land, and you don't really have a right to it just because you're related to some person who once lived there. Like, if you really break it down, it's just silly how people are willing to sacrifice tens of thousands of lives over just random ass border disputes. It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. Is there, like I said, the government is using an opportunity against the people, and we haven't said enough. When I say we, I say, Americans, that, hey, we understand that they were attacked, but we also understand that we have a responsibility to a group of people to protect their children and their loved ones.
Yeah,
And I think that we are finally getting that message across to the administration that this is important because I believe right now Biden has, if not the most, what's that principle called that they're doing right now? they're kind of voting against a no candidate vote.
Yeah.
Maybe
The uncommitted.
non-committed vote, yes. So it's a kind of a movement where essentially people go in to vote knowing that Biden is going to win, but they essentially vote non-committed so they can protest against the well any kind of protest, but this one in particular is about the brutality. There's the Israeli government is going against the Palestinian people.
Yeah, it's basically their best way of showing Biden like we are Democratic voters, and there's this many Democratic voters that you're going to lose if you don't change your position, your stances on Israel. And it's pretty pathetic that that's what it took. And but he sees he's not going to get reelected if he loses Michigan, if he loses Minnesota. At least he can see the writing on the wall. Eventually, it took him forever, but at least he's finally seen what's best for him. That even if he doesn't care about what's good for the Palestinians, at least he's looking at his own self-interest, because that's going to help. It's going to help him too. It's hurting him. It's hurting Palestinians. It's hurting Israel. It's hurting everybody. Just continuing the policies that they've been doing. Absolutely no winners in this situation. So it took his own self-interest to make a move, but sure, at least we're finally doing something to prevent more civilian deaths and casualties, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and we're doing something, and I'm look forward to seeing what we're gonna do in the coming weeks in regards to putting more force on the Israeli government so that we can find a solution. I mean, we cannot have an endless war in Gaza.
No.
We just cannot. We have to find a way to tone down the war fighting and start the dialoguing to try to get some kind of consensus going forward. Because we cannot essentially say that the Israel mandate of wiping out Gaza is an option. That's not going to be an option.
Yeah.
We have to say that, hey, Gaza is a group of people. They deserve to have their lands respected. And we need to find a solution where you guys can live in peace and harmony. And it's our responsibility because we have the most power and influence over Israel.
And civilian casualties aside, it's not even a good strategy for Israel because, first of all, they're wasting endless resources, and they're not going to defeat Hamas because Hamas is not, or at least Palestinian, liberation is not a concept that you can defeat with force. If anything, the force is what is perpetuating its acceleration. You're just creating new generations of people who hate Israel and want to hurt Israel because Israel hurt them. Israel killed all of their friends and family and destroyed their land. You know what I mean? So regardless of how many innocent people there are in Israel who had nothing to do with Netanyahu's government, they're just inviting future terrorism, not just from Palestine or Hamas, but from Iran, from all these other neighboring countries that already have a vested interest in seeing Israel destroyed. So,
yeah, it's really bad, and we got to do something about it. In other news, I'm looking at Florida, our governor. You know that he banned social media for under 14
social media
years
for what is it, 14-year-olds and under?
Yeah,
that's absolutely wild. I mean, it's not an enforceable thing, really. I guess I don't know. It just seems weird, to the extent that he's inviting the federal government to interfere in your personal lives. You know what I mean? The small government guy is going to be like, what? Now we're going to be filtering through people's Instagrams, being like, oh, this mother with her her Instagram account where she has a lot of pictures of her son. We're investigating to see if this is actually a child's Instagram account, and you're going to lose your account because you have too many pictures of your son. Is this really his account? You know what I mean? To what extent are they going to be able to enforce that? They're going to have government officials looking through Instagram trying to find underage social media accounts only within the parameters of Florida. This is some SS shit, man. Gestapo. They're just inviting way too much power to give to state and local government. which has always been like the ideals of the Republican Party. They don't care about small government. They care about localized tyranny, because they have a majority of the power when it comes to individual localities. So if you go, county to county, there's way more Republican controlled areas. So then if you give all the power to individual localities, the Republicans dominate. That's their only way, because they've never had a majority, the voting base. When was the last time they won the popular vote? 2004. So
Yeah.
it's their only winning strategy is to create authoritarianism at the local level and to give more power to counties and school parents, more power over like school boards, all this sort of stuff. Less liberalism in our public schools. We need to bring back God and prayer in school and all this individualized authoritarian stuff that I've had witnessed in my childhood, that I know conservatives have ambitions for their entire lives. They don't care about small government. They just care about anti-liberal values, and that liberalism they view as being protected by the government, which is the role of government, to protect liberty and protect my right to freedom of religion, my right to freedom of speech, your right to assemble, all these sort of things, which conservatives claim to be for, but really oppose. They don't believe in any of that stuff. They just believe it when it protects Christians.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the Republican playbook, divide and conquer. Uh, the reality is that the whole banning of speech of 14-year-olds, there's no way to enforce it.
Yeah.
And if they were to enforce it, a lot of it would be unconstitutional. And I think there was someone that said earlier that this attempt of a bill has been tried and passed several other states, and the Supreme Court have always rejected it. So they don't even think this bill is going to be constitutional when it gets challenged in the courts. So it's just another playbook by DeSantis to get media attention by creating more sensationalism so that he gets his name talked about in the media. But in reality, it's not an actual effective bill that would actually do anything in the state. And that kind of brings me to that point that we have to find a way to start screening these politicians from that, where they pass these bills and and create this idea of success that have passed so many bills
Yeah.
really have zero little impact on people's individual lives.
Politics has just become more and more just become like a theater. You know what I mean? Everybody's
Yeah.
just performing, and the real work is done by like aides, congressional aides and the legislative. And it's only usually specifically when it comes to leadership too, because only the leadership is the one that actually decides everything that passes. So the more and more that power is becoming centralized in our government and becoming less democratic, which it has been pretty, up until Biden administration, it's been like at its lowest democratic point since
Mhm.
I can't even think of the last time. Maybe Nixon, even farther than worse than Nixon, farther back than that. So it's just been like an unprecedented wave of populism leaning towards authoritarianism, right wing specifically. I mean, there's been a left wing populist rise too, but it's not institutionalized and there's no power really, especially in the United States. So this right wing movement is not just a United States problem either. This has been a global issue. It's been growing in Brazil. It's growing in Argentina. All these countries are electing far right leaders with dictatorial ambitions. It's rising right now in Germany. Germany is, they've been ruled by Olaf. Forgot his last name. Either way, he's the Social Democratic Party leader. So they've got a left wing government right now, but right now their AfD is polling at 36%. They're the number one party in the Germany, and they are literally a far right party. Like it's not like an insult. They're like self-described as a far right party, and we all know what that means in Germany. And they're not even the only Nazi party in Germany with institutional power. There's I can't remember what they're called because it's a brand new political party with far left economic opinions and far right social views. So they're just the new National Bolsheviks. Literally, they've been suppressed for all these years, and all of a sudden 2016 far right movements all across the world have been growing in every single country. And I think Trump is a catalyst. He's like the literal antichrist. He's like the resurgence of global Nazism. Even though he's not 100% on board with that, but he's a catalyst for everybody's right-wing populist, far-right national conservative ambitions, which is basically just it's a farther version of conservatism than the classical liberal Republican conservatism that we've experienced, in the last 20 years, where they just talk about small government, low taxes, all this sort of stuff. No, this is a farther conservative. This is just before we had a democratic system. This is autocracy. This is the feudal system resurging. We want to centralize power amongst the elites, and we want to, replace all the liberal establishment, the coastal elites, with people who agree with this specific right-wing Christian nationalist ideological perspective. So they're just doing a U.S. coup. They're doing coups in all over the world, just installing right-wing governments and far-right movements. In France, Marine Le Pen is more popular than she's ever been. Macron is like this neoliberal, center-right liberalist. Everything that they don't believe in anymore in the rest of the world. Like, he's the Putinite kind of political perspective. And he's like every single year is becoming less popular in France, just leading towards, the opposition being more popular.
Someone Macron?
Yeah, Macron, which is just leading to a far right movement in France. So all of Europe has got this major far right bend to it that's just been resurging in the last 10 years. And I don't want to see how this ends,
I mean, it's going to end like it always ends. They're going to go too far.
Yeah.
They're going to go too extreme with it. It's going to cripple every single economy. And then people are going to swing back to the left.
Yeah.
That's what people love. I mean, people love rhetoric.
Yeah.
And people underestimate that a lot. They underestimate someone's ability
people
to
love oppositional rhetoric.
Yeah.
Which is why we always experience the bounce in between the left and the right. Is because it's so much easier to shit on your opponents than it is to promise and follow through with your promises.
Yeah, it's so easier to do that than to govern. Yeah. And that's what's really the problem. It's like, far right's winning right now, because the reality is people want to find how would I say? People would want to find a scapegoat for the way the condition is. And the reality is the way that people's lives are right now is a direct impact on elitism. There's no way around it. Like, you could put a Democrat or you could put a Republican in office and you'll still get some elitism.
Yeah. Because the elitism comes with power, and power is institutionalized. So when then you become a part of the institution, you become part of the elites, and you're expected to adhere to a certain professionalism. John Fetterman being forced to wear a suit. You're forced into this sort of elitist circle, and after being a senator for however many years, you just sort of become like everybody else. You know what I mean? You become the new establishment. It's just something that's inherent to power and the centralization of power, which is why power should be as decentralized as possible. We need a centralized force alongside democracy so we can make decisions. But at the end of the day, like, I shouldn't make decisions about your personal life. You shouldn't make decisions about my personal life. But if, private institutions are controlling people making decisions about their personal lives, controlling government, stuff like that, then government has a responsibility to jump in. So it's like an inherent cycle between who is holding the more power, the private institutions or the public institutions. And wherever the power ends up going, the power ends up corrupting the institutions. So we're kind of in an endless cycle, bouncing between left and right, between all these issues, because it's like the issue is power in general.
I agree. And the issue with power is that we love to abdicate it. We love to give it up.
Yeah.
And we do that because we don't want to make the hard decision. And we think that a handful of capable people can make those decisions.
But then
So
you realize your opposition is completely incompetent. So then letting go of power would be to be enabling their political opinions. And that makes you fearful and, makes you act more authoritarian and more power hungry because you're so sure that you are the one that's the anti-authoritarian that's going to protect the people. But you, by doing so, you are preventing or you're fighting against the democratic institutions in general because you're afraid of some anti-democrat. It's all cycle. Everything's cyclical. Your fear is the thing that corrupts you as a credible representative of the people in general.
mhm.
So, the fear of the opposition always turns, the good into evil. You know what I mean? Only bad things are done with good intentions, or bad things are always done when people think that they're doing the right thing. And they think that they need to cut corners in certain ways that other people wouldn't understand. And it's really for the greater good. But at the end of the day, they're the bad guys doing bad things because they think their ambitions are more important than the people that they harm.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that assessment. I think that most people focus on, you know, what can I do that's positive that doesn't hurt me? Well, what happens is when you have that mentality and you're doing something that's positive that doesn't hurt you,
Hmm.
you realize what you don't realize is unintentionally you're hurting people
Yeah.
because there's no way you can really make effective change without making a sacrifice for yourself. And so I see that that's what our biggest issue is, that a lot of politicians that come into office, and what happens is they have this great intention of really making some effective change, but
Hmm.
then what's happening is their intentions of making that change is jaded by the ability to stay in power.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what happens is
Because it's
you
like I
start,
can't follow through on my change if I lose my power, so I have to focus more on staying in power. And then the entire game is just about power and not about actually following through with your ambitions and your goals for society. And if maybe we didn't offer so much power, we offered less power and it's more delegated widely, then people wouldn't be able to grasp power, or that wouldn't be the main goal of power moving society in a certain direction. If it was more democratic, then it's harder to have smaller groups have more power. You know what I mean? There's more consensus, and the actual ways of changing the minds of societies are more important, and you have to do it in a more catered way because you have to actually unite the country in order to pass something. That's like the democratic ideal. That's why they thought of things like the filibuster, because you wanted a society to be more on the same page, for them to all agree on something. A majority rules. We move society in this direction. But as society is moving forward and misinformation is growing more and more because of the way the internet is moving, we're moving farther and farther apart. So democracy is like more harm than it's ever been. But at the same time, people have more access to the truth than they've ever had. So everything is moving in such a bipolar direction that like it's completely unpredictable which way we end up going.
so I read, so it's funny you said that because I was watching this video over the weekend. It
Mm-hmm.
was about I do weird things like that. I watch videos about like I was watching this video about information theory,
Mm-hmm.
and I know a lot of people are not fans of Elon Musk
Yeah,
on Twitter,
he's pretty
but
dumb.
but he did say something that was, he was saying that we need to stop trying to create more computer science majors
Mm-hmm.
and start focusing on creating more information technology majors.
Yeah.
And I not excuse me, not information technology, but I meant to say information theory majors.
Mm-hmm.
And I was puzzled by that because I didn't know what information theory was.
Yeah.
And then so what I ended up doing was researching what information theory was, and it's come to find out it's about this I can't think of his last name, but it's a scientist. I believe it starts with Allen's his first name. Couldn't think of his last name, but he had an interesting theory, and essentially what he said was that information is knowledge, and information is another way of saying intelligence.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening is when you have too much information brought into you, which is too much intelligence, it becomes noise. And so our society, I think what happens is we have so much information coming out at us that there's just so much noise that we don't know how to discern that information.
Was the guy Alan Watts?
I believe it was Alan Watts.
Oh,
Yes.
Jesse, you got to get into Alan Watts. I am
Yeah.
obsessed with. He's like shaped like my entire perspective. So you got
Well,
go.
no. Oh, no, wait. It may not have been Alan Watts. He's an English writer, philosophy entertainer.
That sounds like Alan Watts.
Security when it was in when I was thinking of information theory.
It sounds like something Alan Watts would say too. So
his name was Shannon. What's his last name? His first name, Alan. I think it was Alan Shannon.
Okay.
Oh no! Wait. No, I could be wrong. His first name was not Alan. Maybe that's why I'm off.
Maybe you just made that part up.
Claude E. Shannon. It's his real name. Okay. So sorry.
Still looking at Watts.
Claude or Allen. It's relatively close.
Yeah.
Or not. But essentially, what essentially is he was saying is that the more information that you take in, the more noise it becomes, and this is apparent in everything that we do, from computers, taking information, humans taking information from each other, humans taking information from Facebook, social media, computers. The more information that we take in, the harder it is for us to discern that information. Yeah. And it's very true. Even when I'm practicing the law, I know if I'm going to try to explain a complex topic, it's very hard to communicate a complex topic with someone. Mm-hmm. So when I present my argument in front of like a jury or a judge, I really simpled down what I'm trying to say into something like a common person would understand.
Yeah.
Because that's just effective communication. You can't bog people down with a lot of jargon words. You gotta make it more simple.
Lawyer jargon is not exactly the easiest language to understand.
That is true. Every profession has that. Doctors, lawyers, we all have that kind of thing, which is hard. But for the most part, just putting in a lot of information to people's, in front of their face makes people shut down because they don't understand a lot of it. And it takes a while to break down everything and understand these concepts. So what a lot of politicians do is, they come in and they say, well, I'm going to do something, but then they can't really explain what they're really doing because they're just blowing out a whole bunch of information, but those information doesn't really connect with people because in reality, they're not saying what really can affect that person's particular life. So my theory is just that I feel like we as humans should have some kind of like app focus, basic focus, that kind of like, it's weird. Like, how would I explain it? So let's say we have a bill, right? That, comes into play and then your congressman wants to vote on it. We should allocate a budget so that our politicians who are our elected officials should be able to upload information on the app. It's like, hey, this is what this bill is saying. And let me break this down to something where it's my perspective. This is the opposing party's perspective. What do you think?
Yeah, this reminds me of Justin Amash. He was my representative in Michigan. He's actually the only third-party member to ever be in Congress in modern times, the Libertarian Party. But he used to be, I used to really admire this about him. He was, before like social media was really dominating, he used to write down every single thing that he voted on Facebook, and he would write a big, long explanation on exactly why he voted for every single thing and the details of the bill. And it was very transparent, and it was why he got reelected year after year, despite being very divergent from the contemporary Republican Party. And he's also running for Senate in Michigan under he left the Libertarian Party to run for Senate as a Republican, which is interesting. I mean, I want him over in the other Republicans hands down because he's actually an honorable person. He's also a Palestinian American, which is interesting. Wow. He's like the most non-interventionist on foreign policy, like probably in Congress at the time. So he's also super, not a fan of us giving money to Israel, despite being a Republican, and a Palestinian. So it's
Yeah.
there's a lot going on there, but he's a very interesting character. But anyways, I
Yeah,
respect the
I've
transparent
heard,
process like that.
no, I've heard of him, and he's very uh, when he was very popular for a minute there, and then he kind of disappeared off the radar a little bit.
Yeah,
But he was popular, and I did hear a lot of his rhetoric, and I thought
but
that he had some good ideas.
he's very
But
intelligent, very respectful person. One of the best
oh,
Republicans that ever existed.
ever existed.
Yeah, it's a low bar.
I don't know.
I get
Oh,
it's a low bar.
are we still taking our bets on Mitt Romney? Like if he's gonna jump in or not?
He retired from Congress because he's too old. I don't think he's gonna um, run for president. He's
I
he's
think
also too like principled as a person that and I don't think he's really like a grifter the same way. Like I believe that he believes what he believes, even if he's wrong. You know what I mean?
you're probably right. He's 77. I think that's gonna be
Oh,
tough.
he's 77.
I didn't know he was that old.
Wow. Yeah, I knew he was like probably 70 and he was retiring, but that's yeah. Yeah, no, he's probably not. Oh, let's take betting odds, Jesse.
I'm gonna recant my bet.
I know.
He's 77. But I find it interesting that he's from Detroit, Michigan. You never said that.
Well, George Romney was the governor of Michigan.
Oh, his dad was the governor.
Yeah, his dad was the governor of Michigan during like the civil rights movement, and he was actually a really good Republican, as far as they go. And it's with the civil rights movement, he was really pro civil rights, especially in the 50s, which is,
That's really radical.
it's really radical for a Republican. I mean, I guess Dwight Eisenhower's not too far off. He desegregated public schools and stuff like that. He wasn't ideal for sure, but that's the kind of Republican that we need. We need that
Yeah.
that party back.
No, I agree. We do. I'm just thinking, what was he the governor of again?
Who Mitt Romney? He was the governor of Massachusetts. I assume
Yeah,
because he went to school there or something like that. And then
yeah,
he moved to Utah because he's a Mormon.
yeah, and he became the senator of Utah.
Even though he didn't have any real ties to Utah, he just decided to establish his residency there. And then 2 years later, he ran for the Senate, which is a little grifty, sure, because that's the
Yeah,
only
but
place.
he's like the most popular Mormon of all time, isn't he?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, he's like a living legend there.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
the
he
king,
could have ran
the
till his.
king, the what?
I said he could have ran for office until his death there, for sure.
Yeah,
But
he's like,
he knew the right thing to do, and he's decided to retire. He's not
yeah,
even like Mitch McConnell, who is like literally mentally incompetent at this point.
he's retiring though, Mitch, right?
Yeah, he like can barely function as an adult. He's even worse than Biden.
Yeah, he's done.
Yeah.
Well, this might be a big change of the guard. This I don't see Mitt. If Mitt goes,
McConnell, Nancy Pelosi's gone.
she's not retiring, is she?
She's not in leadership anymore,
She's not in leadership, but I think she's
which
still
is
gonna
the
stay.
important part. And
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi's gonna die.
now Marjorie Taylor Greene is talking about she wants to get rid of Mike Johnson. So who knows how long he's gonna last? I don't know. I think he might stick around for a minute because he seems mostly popular amongst Republicans. But Republicans are unhinged, so they could turn on him at any minute.
I don't know. I think people like Marjorie Taylor Greene needs to. I don't. She's probably gonna win her seat forever.
Yeah.
But someone like that's never gonna go anywhere outside her seat.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think she'll be in part of an administration or something in the future, but she's more of a influencer than anything. The far right kind of like it's the Georgia, I think 14th. Some super far right district.
Oh, it's gotta be super conservative.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, she's right outside Atlanta. That is very shocking.
Is it really? It's probably the far right suburbs where all the rich white people in Atlanta avoid the rest of the population.
Maybe, but it's not.
Almost certain. Almost. I don't even have to look it up. I know it is. I know she's
probably in the suburbs.
There's no other.
Yeah, she's in the suburbs. There's no way she can.
Yeah.
She can never win in a city.
That's what
she got to stick to her.
Like
good whole.
I can't imagine a single non-white person could vote for her.
I mean,
She's like
she's the prototypical. I'm a farm girl. I'm down. And
she's the Confederate
yeah,
she's a
it's
descendant
a,
of Confederacy, you
exactly.
know what
It's
I mean?
like I'm a proud Confederate. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, like
much.
if this was America 1940, you probably had a shot at the presidency. And
Oh yeah. Well, except she's a woman, so
well,
no.
that's true too, because the Confederates would never vote for a
Her
woman.
idea is there. She's George. Is it George Wallace?
Yeah, George Wallace. Yeah,
George
George
Wallace.
Wallace.
He's the
Is
racist one. Yeah,
basically,
George Wallace reincarnated.
yeah, but no,
Yeah,
the Confederates would never vote for a woman. A woman?
a woman. Her role's in the kitchen, pretty much.
Yeah, that's the Confederates for you. It's like, don't you know, it's nothing
Yeah,
but the white man and the white Southern man that should dictate the role of the country.
it just goes to show that these people never really went away.
Of course.
And there's something true about what conservatives say when it comes to like media bias or something like
Yes.
that, because we really, have pretended like the far right isn't a sizable minority pretty much the entire time America has existed. You know what I mean? They never went away. They just lost institutional power,
No.
which is why it's fair for conservatives to feel alienated and like the liberals are running everything and they have all the institutional power and all that sort of stuff and they're preventing Donald Trump from running. It's understandable how they can have that perspective because,
No,
United States is a liberal
no.
country.
I disagree with that. I think that
No, I think they're stupid. I just think I understand where they're coming from a far right
no.
perspective.
I
You
said why.
know, if you're in those shoes and all the institutions are against you, if it's pretty hard for you to have an objective opinion on the situation.
Well, I agree, but the part I disagree on is the fact that I have a lot of Republican conservative friends. I'm Democrats,
Yeah.
and I have Republican conservative friends who like to shoot. Who go shooting, and
Sure.
and so that doesn't have to, because you're conservative doesn't mean you have to be, how would I say, uh, I don't want to say racist, but this is the word I'm using because I don't have any other word. But
There's a lot of different motivations.
yeah.
I feel like non-politically active Republicans, the sort of ones that just sort of grow up in the area and they have conservative values. A lot of them are, they don't live their day-to-day life as a racist, you know what I mean? But they are also racially ignorant and probably don't live around a lot of other diverse backgrounds, and so they'll have prejudiced opinions based on only being around their anger bias. So they could act racist without having racist intentions, but that's kind of how racism has moved. I mean, there still are very straight up blatant racists in the United States and obviously in Europe, where they don't have a sizable minority race at all. You know what I mean? So that's why fascism is on a rise, is because immigration is, a part of the liberal ideology is globalism, global immigration, and multiculturalism. So as all these sort of liberal governments in Europe, liberal to socialist leaning governments, all the progressive governments in Western Europe are having a lot of immigration and refugees from all the sorts of different countries that have, non-white, non-European descents. And all of a sudden, racism's on the rise again. Big shocker. Nativism is, playing a key role in politics, as it always has. People think that for some reason, if you're born in the same land and watch the same TV shows and went to the same kind of schools, that makes you a more valuable person or somebody that's more worth being around.
Well,
When it's
a
not,
fallacy. It's a fallacy of argument, that mindset,
yeah,
and I think you're going to the fallacy of that. But I just want to come in
yeah,
before it. Essentially, it, this whole idea that some conservative Republicans bring out, like, oh, a minority would take my job, Black, Latino, whatever minority you want to say, they're gonna take my job and stuff like that. It's just phallus, because the reality is, before Europeans even knew about Africans and minorities, they were fighting each other for centuries. It's like for
yeah.
centuries, European.
It doesn't even have to be a
It
racial thing.
wasn't.
It's still, like I
Yeah,
said, everything is in group, out group. If you aren't abiding to the same ideas as me, if you aren't the whole key is tolerance to an extent, but I mean, it's also like acceptance of people for their inherent qualities, not their
Mhm.
ideas. But, you know, just having somebody that thinks differently from you being so threatening to your own values that you feel like you need to prevent them from being near you or have any sort of equal say to you is the key fears, is the key to authoritarianism. And that's pretty much the key to conservative ideology is like
Yeah.
fear. Conservatism is just based on fear of things changing against the way that I currently like it. And you know, I have a fear of us moving in a direction that I become the conservative, but you know, it's a better alternative than what we have
Mhm.
now. It's a situation in which we become so ultra progressive that like I feel like I need to conserve the values that my country stood for. That's at least a good thing, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? The problem has always been backsliding. You know, that's where all the violence comes from because like I've said, progress can only happen incrementally. You really can't change a society to move a society forward without some sort of change and some sort of people being able to settle into a new system. While fascist coups and you know movements have always required heavy amounts of force and backsliding, and you know it doesn't take an easy system. You always have to do it by you know forcing values down other people's throats. It's inherent to the system of right-wing ideologies is non-acceptance. Liberalism is acceptance, acceptance of different cultures and multiculturalism. Conservatism is you have to be forcefully aligned with the values of this country. What and they always talk about individualism. What is more collectivist than
Yeah.
that? That you can't think freely for yourself in this own country. We have to be a country that forces a certain ideology, a Christian nationalist, which is what they've been talking about. Christian nationalism. America should be a Christian nation. Everything that follows that is purely
Yeah.
authoritarianism. So I don't know how long the Republican Party could claim to be a party of freedom, like before everybody sort of catches on that that's they're completely opposite perspectives.
Yeah.
You know, you can't have freedom for some without freedom for all.
For sure. Well, so I mean, and that's, I mean, racism is never going to just go away overnight. I mean, someone I
Mm-hmm.
can just speak for my experience uh, with racism, and I think that we as a country doing a lot better than we did in 1960. But I think Trump was the last. Was I don't? I'm not gonna say Trump's a racist because I don't really know him like that.
Trump's
But his
racist.
rhetoric is racist. You know, it's his,
It's pretty hard to have racist rhetoric as a non-racist person. That's just my
yeah. But
opinion.
I'm a lawyer, so I'm very
I get it. I get it.
yeah,
I don't think Trump's going to sue you for calling him racist, but yeah, I get it. I understand your
yeah.
perspective.
Yeah. Sorry, you really called out that Lori talk just now. But yeah, so yeah, so the rhetoric talk, the racism that he uses in his rhetoric is,
Hmm.
you know, I think it brought out a lot of the last, which tend to be older,
Yeah.
last,
The last wave of racism within you know the American. But
yes.
the thing is, all the people that are big Trump's biggest supporters are people that are born in the 30s and
Yeah,
40s.
exactly. It's the last little bit of it.
That's your point. Is like they're the last wave inherently because they're going to be dead within the next two presidential
Yeah,
cycles. You know, the sort of racist behavior is literally going to die
yeah,
off unless Trump creates a new generation of young little racist boys, little 14-year-olds who think they're cocky, edgy, you know, masculine alpha
yeah,
types who think that they can just say whatever the fuck they want because, you know, it's America and freedom and Trump is being discriminated against and white men are being discriminated against because they want
yeah.
equality and shit like this. This is the scary fork in the road that is a potential. But I don't really think big picture we're going to ever move in that direction.
Uh,
I do think society is going to figure itself out, even if it takes a few rough turns before it
yeah,
gets there.
I think that I look forward to seeing the election this year because it's going to tell me if Trump
Hmm.
loses really badly, it's going to tell you the direction
Yeah.
that we're going as a country. Because every single well, not every single one of them, but majority of the people he picked to win in the last 4 years have all done that, done
Yeah.
poor.
Yeah. He's only won in 2016, and everything else has been just L after L. Other than, the Supreme Court being forced towards the conservative end so that they've been getting some things passed by the Supreme Court. But the legislation has not been a very successful thing for them, as well as the presidency. Nothing really worked for the Republicans. And they don't have much of a winning message. And, after this if they do lose by like a large margin, it's really even a larger margin than last time. It'll be really, really hard to defend the idea that conservatism is still the majority and it's all just a rigged election. It's not because it's reflecting the opinions of the American populace. I am concerned about a close election, though, because that's just going to continue the same old shit that we've seen for the last 4 years about, the liberals are in charge and conservatives are being discriminated against, and, they're throwing away our ballots, and they're, they're changing the rules so fast so that they can win, and they're inviting immigrants who will only vote for Democrats and all this sort of stuff. Republicans are always projecting on the immigration issue because they think Democrats care about immigration because of voting demographics. Even though we already have the majority of the American people, as if we need more people to be Democrats, as if it wasn't more of a voter suppression issue. They are concerned about immigration turning the tides against Republicans because the Republicans are a white majority party. Yeah. So, once they're immigrants who are obviously going to vote for Democrats who support immigration don't discriminate against people of color. So they're obviously going to vote for them. So all their concerns about immigration are just about maintaining power, while Democrats believe in immigration because of moral reasons. So they're always they're projecting their values, their reason for being against immigration onto Democrats who have a completely different reason for having a moral virtue of, people having the freedom of movement. So it just really shows their real values. And I do think that Republicans have a racist bent toward them, but I think that isn't purely based in racism anymore. I think it's based in power. While I think that at one point it was based in just purely hating people of color, I think they moved towards a place where they hate people of color because people of color are the ones that are going to go against their values more likely. And they're more likely to vote for Democrats who are liberal and are more likely to support all the things that they don't support. Therefore, they project all their fears onto immigrants and onto people of color because they are the liberals. They're changing our way of living, and they're LGBTQing our children, and all this sort of fear that they have, they can project onto somebody else. They're not the in group. They don't look like me. They're brown. So it's just so much easier for them to just make people of color a scapegoat instead of seeing the real problems in the society, which is, being closed-minded towards people of entire groups and grouping people in together like that based on identity, which is exactly what they're doing.
No, I agree with you. You said...
Sorry for that going in 10 different directions.
No, you said and cut you off because I think everything you said is 100% on point. I mean, they're going to have a problem in the next couple of years because at the end of the day, if your rhetoric is driven by your ability to divide, when you have nobody on your side to divide it,
exactly.
Doesn't make sense,
It doesn't make sense. At one point, it was just about maintaining the majority, and now since they aren't the majority, it's like, how do we divide the majority, which is already against us? Which is why I do kind of still think RFK was originally a Manchurian candidate kind of thing. Yeah. I think he was like a Republican who used the Kennedy name to run as a Democrat to take votes away from Biden. And then he got power hungry and he liked the attention. So now he just sort of went renegade and ran as an independent. And now he's taking votes from Trump. So
it's funny. It's funny you say that because I was just reading an article that says he's going to pick his VP.
Oh, yeah.
Tomorrow.
I'm pretty sure I already know who it is. She's like it seems pretty clear from all my indications that it's some billionaire's ex-wife who is a major donor and supporter of Kennedy. So he's just picking a loyalist at the end of the day instead of somebody with name recognition that could either hurt or harm his ticket. He's just picking somebody that's more of a wash. It's a woman, sure, and she's marginally younger than every other person announced, other than maybe Kamala. But
Nicole Shannon.
yeah, exactly. So I feel like she's more or less going to do nothing to his ticket.
He's gonna do a whole Sarah Palin thing, huh?
Do whole what?
Sarah Palin thing.
Oh, kinda. Except Sarah Palin had at least some sort of institutional power. This is a completely no-name person with no real power, except for probably the ability to raise money and have sort
That's
of
important.
networking power and stuff. So
I don't think that's gonna help his ticket. He need to get more of an establishment guy.
that's what I'm thinking too. Although his whole thing is being anti-establishment, which is why I feel like his best pick would have been like Ventura, who is been in the establishment, but he's still anti-establishment. You know what I mean? He used to be a governor, but he still rails against the system. Although he's an old white man, so that probably wouldn't work.
But yeah, two white men in a ticket.
Yeah.
I mean,
as a non-Republican trying to gain different sources of independent voters, that probably is not the smartest move. Because right now the biggest people that RFK is peeling off from Democrats is actually Muslims or Black Americans who are really not a fan of the establishment Democratic Party, and the situation in Israel and the situation with student loans and all the sort of things and stagnancy and complacency that they perceive in the Democratic Party kind of pushes them against Democrats, but it doesn't push them towards Republicans who are obviously delusional and insane. So they're kind of just stuck with somebody who has a name recognition and says, reasonably anti-establishment rhetoric. I have multiple normal-ass Democrat friends that are just like young dudes that I work with, normal, good, smart-thinking people who are just like, I'm considering voting for Kennedy. And I'm like, I understand why. If you don't do enough research like we do into the actual reasons, motivations behind his rhetoric and the actual policies that he's going to follow through with, he's grifting. He's grifting for power. He's not really a genuine guy as much as people seem to perceive him. But if you're really grasping at straws for somebody who's not Trump or Biden, yeah, that's pretty much the choice you got. So he kind of is the non-committed vote, essentially. So, and I think he's going to be the key to the election because it depends on if he gets on ballot access in Texas and Arkansas, but not in Denver or not in Colorado or in Oregon, or you know what I'm saying?
I mean, I think he was on 6 ballots only.
I'm pretty sure it's still at a low number, but we do have a lot of time until the actual election. So, as far as I know, unless I'm not sure when the deadline for getting on the ballot is, but I think that's the key.
It's like in the summer months.
So we'll see how that goes. I feel like he's been saving his big, I don't know, his whatever his strongest cards are, because he's got a lot of he really does have a lot of celebrity endorsements, and I feel like if he starts getting some funds, you're gonna see a lot more commercials of well-known celebrities endorsing Kennedy, and that's gonna change a lot of people's minds. Just people who just don't know about politics and are sick of the very obvious problem that is just a re-election between Trump and Biden.
Mm-hmm.
So
these numbers are terrible, man. You know how many ballots this guy's on?
Yeah, he's struggling with ballot access, huh?
He's in 8 ballots. The Libertarians have 37. The No Labels Party has 22. The Green Party has 21.
Interesting.
Constitution Party, I didn't know that was a party, has 13.
They're far right, fundamentalist Christian party.
The RFK is 8, and Cornell West is on 4. So, and the 4 that he's on are not even in swing states. So he's going to lose.
Cornell West?
Yeah.
Yeah, Cornell West, I don't even know why he's running at this point. He should never have left the Green Party.
No, he needs to stick to the Green Party 21. I think No Labels, whoever is on that No Labels ticket, man, they have a lot of.
Okay, maybe RFK isn't the main factor. It's just gonna be third parties in general.
Yeah,
Or
it's gonna be. Yeah, none of them are gonna win, but they're gonna get a lot of votes.
and I think turnout is
They're gonna eat
also
up a lot
just
of
as
them.
key. Turnout is just as key as how many third party people they take from. Because,
Hmm.
Republicans are going to be, I mean, unless Trump really starts screwing the pooch by grasping for, donations to fund his, legal bills. Uh, Other than that, I feel like Republicans are going to stay pretty motivated to turn out to vote. Even though Trump is shooting himself in the foot by he stopped his team that's like minority outreach, and he stopped pushing for early mail-in voting. Like he's doing the same thing that made him lose in 2020. He's like, oh, we're not gonna win by mail-in voting. We're gonna show up and voter ID, blah 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 blah. Stick to our values. It's just gonna make him shoot himself in the foot. I don't think Trump's gonna win anymore.
I don't
I
think so.
just I just don't see how. It's
He
it's
was
possible.
doing something. He was doing something when he was trying to court the black vote, but then he stopped because his base
Yeah,
didn't like it.
yeah,
And then he was like, "Well, you're not going to win." So it's
yeah.
like you can't win an American election with only 50% of the population
The
that's voting.
Republicans have done such a good job of consolidating their base. You know what I
Hmm.
mean, and having them all be on the same page. But
Yeah,
then that's been such a good thing for giving them some sort of unity and all this stuff. But it's been just detrimental to their national electoral odds,
hmm,
because the more they cater to the far right and the conservative bases, the more that they lose at the center right and the independent voters, and it's
yeah,
it's really pushing them mostly in third party directions. But I mean, there's definitely most people would probably prefer, if you don't already support Trump, you probably prefer Biden to Trump at the very least. There's probably
hmm,
a sizable version of that just are like, for some reason, thinks they're exactly equally bad.
yeah,
That's obviously a stupid opinion, but for the most part, people would still prefer Biden to Trump if they're not already Trump supporters.
yeah. Of course,
So I
and
think that's
and
all it's ultimately come down to again.
and that's why it's going to be hard for him to win if you're banking on the fact that you get zero black voters, zero Latino voters. Maybe you get the Cubans in Miami because
Yeah, no,
Cubans.
he's gonna have more Latino voters than you think,
Yeah,
though.
yeah, yeah. So he's probably not gonna get zero because
Yeah,
the Cubans for some reason love Trump.
they
Makes
love
no
Trump.
sense to me, but they do.
It's because they're
Uh,
the conservatives of Cuba who left the socialist Cuba for the free market America. So they're super nationalistic and pro
yeah,
American Western values, all that stuff.
but then again, they left a dictator to like another dictator. It doesn't make
Yeah,
sense.
no, it doesn't.
The logic is just not there.
No.
But yeah, so he doesn't have a base. I mean, 30% of racist, people,
Yeah,
and a couple of Cuban Latino voters, which at your very best day, let's say you get a million of them,
yeah.
that's not going to swing an election your way. If you drew,
Especially if you already have Florida on lockdown, like
yeah, you're going to win Florida. That's like no one got that. So it's like it's not even Democrats are not even counting on Florida
yeah.
in their actual the map that they think to win. They're
Hmm.
banking on Michigan in the northern states. They're not betting anywhere near Florida or Texas. They're just not. So
Isn't Trump the one who said he's gonna win New Jersey and he's gonna all this sort of dumb shit too? So he's campaigning in like Virginia and New Jersey instead of the swing states because of his own delusions.
Chris
Was
Christie
that?
hates. He's never gonna
Oh,
win New Jersey.
no, of course not. New Jersey is incredible. I mean, they are like the wealthiest state in the union, something like that,
Yeah,
per capita, at least top three. But they are very heavily Democratic voting, even if they're pretty much. I mean, they're one of the most notorious records of corrupt politicians. It's pretty
yeah,
hilarious if you look into it. Like that's the Bob Menendez state. That's the state where Cory Booker replaced like a notoriously corrupt politician. Like they just have a real big problem with corruption in New Jersey,
yeah. Sound
and
like
that's probably
Chicago.
why Trump thinks that he'd win.
Yeah, that happens. Chicago too, huh?
Yeah, yeah, true.
Yeah, man. Well, that brings us to our show, guys.
Yeah,
Where you
we
learned
covered
about
every
corrupt
topic that we could.
politicians. You learned about corrupt politicians. What else did we learn? Not to be racist.
Don't be racist, guys.
you guys
You learned
haven't learned
one thing
it,
today. Don't be
yes,
racist.
don't be racist.
It hurts you as much as everyone else.
Yeah, it's not cool.
Not cool, guys.
What else did we teach them today?
Democracy is,
Democracy is king.
democracy is a thing. Fascism is on the rise globally.
Yes, and Israel, get your act together.
Get your shit together, man. Come on.
Yeah, stop killing Palestinians.
You're hurting yourself as much as you're hurting others.
Yeah, it's not cool.
That's really the lesson.
That is the lesson.
When you hurt others, you hurt yourself.
Yeah, I know. What did you say? Look yourself in the mirror,
Yeah.
before you judge others.
We're all brothers and sisters.
All right, guys. Well, we love having you guys on. Hope you guys learned something. We look forward to seeing you next week. And thanks for tuning in to Imagine More.